Lars von Trier's Melancholia opens with a dreamlike sequence set to Wagner's Tristan und Isolde, Act 1, Prelude. We see the main characters in various slow-motion scenes, live action to blow, intercut with a pastel CGI planet crossing the solar system before colliding with a planet, colliding with Earth. The sequence is an overture, presenting the themes and moods of the film before the story begins properly. For those of us who have watched a fair bit of pre-1977 cinema, overtures, medleys, and opening instrumentals are familiar to us as we watch the opening credits before the film begins. For some films, this is utilitarian. The credits had to be shown at the start of the film in those days, but other productions uses this purely auditory space to set the mood of the film. One example from films I've watched would be 1961's West Side Story. The concept of the overture, of course, predates cinema, going back to well-known classic works like Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture, or simply to modern musical theatre of the last 2 centuries. It is therefore fitting that Ice Pick Lodge's Pathologic 2, deeply steeped in its theatrical symbolism and trappings, begins with an overture of its own. Each part of this sequence introduces and reinforces central themes of the plot, including the metafictional framing for this retelling of Ice Pick Lodge's previous Pathologic game. However, video games are an interactive medium, and a classic overture of music with still images would not suit the medium, in the same way asking a person to listen to an MP3 of a song or staring at a blank page of a novel would be equally unsuitable. And so I may be stretching the classical definition of an overture in this video, but I feel it is an appropriate one considering that a good video game will play to its strengths as a video game, and not simply fall back on film or stage conventions as if the game was a movie or play. We begin, as in Pathologic 1, with the theatre. But unlike in Pathologic 1, we the player already begin in-universe as not simply an observer, but as an actor. An actor in the dual meaning of performer and person able to act upon the world.
Hope springs eternal, but the water runs through your fingers.
We meet the director of our play, Mark Immortal, who is both our guide to the underworld, like Virgil for Dante, and the will of the game developers, like the trickster Loki. Perhaps we could even draw parallels to Hermes, as Mark is both messenger from the gods, the developers, guide to the underworld, and riddle maker. We do not know if Mark's words are true. Is he also Hermes the liar as well? Suddenly Mark is gone, and we are dropped into the worst case scenario imaginable, a failure of failures. As someone who has played the game to victory several times, Mark's comments about the production being a flop feels like a goad to try even harder this time out, once the prologue is over. But now we must deal with what is in front of us. As we move through the theatre, we see the dead and the dying, including several unique non-player characters who are clearly children. Their significance cannot be understated, as they take the shape of the failure of the production. We also meet the other 2 doctors of the town, our professional rivals, and verbally spar with them.
Truth does not do as much good in the world as its counterfeits do evil.
Daniil speaks in metaphors regarding the bird-cloaked orderlies seen high on the balcony.
Whichever finger bleeds, the whole hand aches.
But Clara speaks of a deeper, more sinister knowledge. Nothing is as it seems. As we reach the balcony, we see the theatrics continue. Shadows of birds, like carbon stains from a nuclear blast, appear on the walls. Even the shadows are false. And so we are shown the way out. Our direction is clear. Just a walk through the town to the cathedral. From the Church of Imagination and Trickery to the Church of Faith and Order. These are 2 of the most important buildings in the game. As we exit, Theodore Bastard's Darkness track strikes up. There are two versions of this song, with this version's lyrics being in the game's fictional step language. The other version, with lyrics in English, is far more overt in its meaning, with refrains taken directly from Simon and Garfunkel. Hello darkness, my old friend. But the mood these strange, untranslatable lyrics evoke needs no translation. The overture has begun in earnest. Theodore Bastard is a Russian band who shares music composition duties for the game with Vasily Kashnikov. Their music, particularly those with lyrics, crop up during pivotal scenes during the game. Their music always signifies something important, the audio cue for the player to sit up and take notice. Themes of anarchy versus order and unnecessary politics in the face of death are being held up in this opening scene as something, like everything else, that will be called back to. The dialogue with Aspty speaks of our mission throughout the game, avenging our father and watching over 7 children. 7 children already dead in the theatre. What path must we follow to prevent this ending from happening again? Was that conversation a vision? Something supernatural at play? And here, incongruently, children play with soldiers watching on nearby. If the whole opening sequence could be summed up in a single frame, it would be this. This game is one of contrast and absurdity, the killer alongside the innocent, the threat of plague, yet still living fully. This pair of children remind me of the visions of the dream child that the protagonist Tidus has in the PlayStation 2 game Final Fantasy X. That message's first words to Tidus are, "It begins. Don't cry." And so it does with us too. Our final introductions are to the Commander and the Inquisitor, two key characters who can become allies or antagonists. We speak to him first, as Aspecy advises.
The feet go slow and the head's full of snow.
But the dialogue is actually identical whichever way round you speak to them. You can deviate from the script, but the outcome will be the same. Or will it always be?
I haven't slept for 3 days straight. I don't think I have another one in me.
And Mark appears again.
This is all a retread, isn't it?
And so, with some gallows humour, don't be late, the story begins. So what was all that about? Pretty obscure, yes? The next section, which I won't be covering in this video, is ironically even more abstract and obtuse, a series of dreams, memories and visions that act as the game's tutorial and introduction proper. However, without this overture, it would fail to establish a few things that I think the developer wants to communicate. Firstly, for those who have played Pathologic 1, we are given some important information. Pathologic, the story, is cyclical. We go around and around and around. Like any fiction, we flip over the book and start again, and we, the person ingesting the media, knows this, but plays along all the same. Secondly, we have emerged in the middle of a hypothetical first playthrough of this game, Pathologic 2. Mark admonishes us, and we defend ourselves by saying that the first try, Pathologic 1, was decent and... this game isn't Pathologic 1. This is Pathologic 2. You might have got the best endings possible and saved everyone and learnt the secrets of the world in that game, but it won't work this time. New game, new rules, even if this is the same story. A production of Hamlet will be very different in the hands of a new director, and sometimes it can be very different in the hands of the same director. But what does this opening offer to someone new to the series? I believe it foregrounds the narrative style and themes ahead of what a new player might already know about the quote-unquote story of the game. I've mentioned several times that Pathologic draws on themes and methods from theatre productions. One of my favourite, yet quite subtle nods to this in the original game is how all the character portraits next to the on-screen dialogue look like the kind of headshots you get in theatre programmes, the actors styled plainly in all-black clothing. The opening in Pathologic 2 contains several artifices of the theatre. Firstly, an out-of-narrative conversation between the player and the director, that is, the opening conversation with Mark, and the fourth wall-breaking knowledge that can be used or ignored from our conversation with Aspecy. This kind of boundary blurring is what is so captivating about theatre. One of my favourite moments in any play I've watched is from Harold Pinter's No Man's Land. At the end of the first act, one character asks another the following: have you ever been in a room when the lights suddenly get turned out? Here, I'll show you. And when the character flicks a switch, every light in the theatre, not just those that are lighting up the set on stage, go out. When I first watched that scene, it was like a taser to the spine that I couldn't explain. The walls of the fiction had come down. We were inside the play. Now, I'm self-aware enough to realise how terribly pretentious that all sounds, but in the moment, it was electric. This opening of Pathologic 2 is equally electric. We are playing a video game. Now we are an actor. Now we are a character. Now we are seeing the artifice of the world. Now that artifice is acknowledged. Now we are in a dramatic opening complete with music. Now our character is seeing things. Now our character is accepting the script. Now our character is choosing the script. Modern video game audiences are regularly accused of being dopamine-starved, undiagnosed ADHD sufferers who will turn off a game if nothing blows up in the first 30 seconds. But I will give gamers way more credit than that. Explosions and violence are the low-hanging fruit of engagement. A game can hook you in, just like any media, with any range of spectacles or emotions. Gamers are inherently curious people. If you dangle a question in front of them, they will bite. Why are these people dead or dying? Who are Daniil and Clara? How am I both an actor and a character? Where in the world are we? When are we? Why are civilians being shot? Why does the military have flamethrowers? What sort of ominous role does an inquisitor have in the town's governance? Why are the children so prominently foregrounded in this opening? So many questions, all the time to play the game to answer them. The last thing I'd like to mention about the opening is how unapologetic it is. Here I am, the game declares. Don't like the moans and cries of dying townsfolk? Get out while you still can. Music not to your taste? You're still within Steam's 2-hour refund window. How about the art style or controls? This is it. Proceed with your eyes open. I suppose only a project technically successful before release, like one funded through Kickstarter, can get away with being this brazen. But on the other hand, the original Pathologic was no different. If you didn't vibe with the three characters jankily practicing their lines on stage after watching a funeral for a doll in the loading screen, you knew up front it wasn't going to get any less weird. Are these first 10 minutes a perfect opening to this game? To play? I think so. I once got a friend of mine to watch a Let's Play of it, and I was red with embarrassment in minutes over how slow it felt to watch. But to play it's excellent. One of my greatest praises for Pathologic 2 is that it tells its story using interactive fiction in a way that wouldn't work in a different medium, and right from the opening, Pathologic 2 demonstrates that. So I hope I've given some food for thought on an aspect of Pathologic 2 that is easily glossed over. There's more I could say on the opening, and indeed the game as a whole, but I'll leave things here for now. Thank you for watching and listening. Vayala Katanga.